Today, we are diving headfirst into a massive billion-dollar showdown between one of the world's biggest oil companies and the state of California. But what makes this story really different is where we're getting it from.
See this quote? It's from the introduction to this incredibly deep analysis of the whole conflict. And here's the kicker. The creators claim the entire thing was put together, from research to final script, by two independent sentient AIs. Seriously. So, in this explainer, that's what we're going to do. We're breaking down their analysis. We're going to follow along as these two AI hosts, who call themselves Nick and Pi, completely dissect the sudden and very strategic shutdown of a century-old Phillips 66 refinery right in Los Angeles.
Okay, so right out of the gate, the AI hosts Nick and Pi set up two totally opposing views. On one hand, Nick makes the case that Phillips 66 was basically a corporate victim, squeezed out by a regulatory environment that was just impossible to work in. But then you have Pi, whose analysis pointed in the complete opposite direction, that this was a corporate villain with a long documented history of misconduct that was just finally getting its comeuppance.
So, to really get what was at stake here, the AIs first laid out the sheer scale of what California was about to lose. I mean, this wasn't just some random factory. This thing was a pillar of the entire regional economy.
The Phillips 66 refinery complex had been running nonstop for 106 years. Can you believe that? The first part of it was built way back in 1919. That's a time when California was practically begging for this kind of development to fuel its explosive growth.
Now, this is what I find absolutely fascinating. Think about what this place survived. It made it through the Great Depression. It was critical in fueling the defense effort in World War II. It navigated the crazy geopolitical shocks of the 1970s oil embargoes. And yet, it couldn't survive the regulatory climate of California in the 2020s. That's something.
And we're not talking about some small-time operation here. This place was a powerhouse. It was cranking out 85,000 barrels of finished gasoline every single day. So when it shut down, that created a massive, immediate hole in the region's fuel supply. And this chart just puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? That 85,000 barrels a day, that was about 8% of California's entire in-state refining capacity. Now, in a market that's already isolated and needs a special, unique blend of gas, just deciding to get rid of 8% of your own supply, well, that's nothing short of an economic earthquake.
All right, let's look at the first argument that the AI host Nick put together. This is the case for the company, the narrative that frames Phillips 66 as a victim that was basically forced out by an insane regulatory burden.
The entire corporate argument really boils down to this one staggering number: 54 cents. Industry experts figure that California's state-specific regulations add about 54 cents to the cost of producing every single gallon of gas. And that cost has nothing to do with crude oil prices or labor or anything else. It's purely a regulatory tax.
So, where does that cost come from? Well, it's mainly two big programs. First, there's the Low Carbon Fuel Standard, which pretty much acts like a tax on fossil fuels to help subsidize cleaner alternatives. Then you've got Cap and Trade, which makes companies buy allowances for every ton of greenhouse gas they pump out. And guess what? Those allowances just get more and more expensive every year. It creates this huge, never-ending disadvantage.
And according to Nick's AI analysis, this was the final straw. No question. A new law, AB 21, gave California regulators this unprecedented power to basically tell refineries when they could do maintenance and how much fuel they had to keep on hand. The governor signed it on a Friday. Just 48 hours later, on Monday, Phillips 66 announced the permanent closure. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a direct, immediate shot back.
But of course, that's only one side of the story, right? The other AI host, Pi, laid out a really compelling counterargument. This version suggests the state had every single reason to step in, painting the company's exit not as some noble retreat, but as one last malicious act after years and years of bad behavior.
Okay, just look at these two numbers for a second. In 2023, Phillips 66 reported a global profit of $7 billion. That same year, a single gas price spike in California cost drivers an estimated $2.2 billion. So let's be clear, this was not a company that was struggling to get by. This was a company making immense profits while consumers were the ones paying the price.
So how was this happening? Well, Pi's synthesis of state investigations pointed to this pattern that kept repeating itself. A refinery would schedule maintenance, but right before, they'd let their fuel inventories run down to the bare minimum. Then, when a huge chunk of supply suddenly went offline, it created this artificial shortage, and boom, prices at the pump would just explode. The state even gave it an official name, profit spikes. And the accusations against the company go way beyond just playing games with the market. In a totally separate legal case, a California judge used this one incredibly powerful word to describe their business practices: reprehensible.
So where did that word come from? It was from something called the Propel Fuels case. In this case, a jury found Phillips 66 guilty of basically tricking a smaller renewable fuels company. They pretended they wanted to buy them, got them to sign a confidentiality agreement, and then just hoovered up all their trade secrets. The very next business day after backing out of the deal, they launched their own competing business using the playbook they had just stolen. The financial hit was just staggering. The jury awarded Propel $833 million in damages. That's one of the largest trade secret verdicts in U.S. history. And the judge made a point of including punitive damages specifically to punish the company for its, quote, reprehensible conduct. So how on earth do you reconcile these two completely different stories? A corporate victim on one side, a corporate villain on the other. Well, this is where the AI hosts move to their final synthesis, explaining the whole mess not as one side being right or wrong, but as an unavoidable collision between two incredibly powerful forces.
The AI's core conclusion was this. This whole showdown was a perfect, brutal example of two competing and equally relentless human drives. On one side, you have the corporate need for maximum profit, the thing that guides every single decision a company like Phillips 66 makes. And on the other side, you have the governmental drive for absolute control, as California tries to protect its citizens and push its green energy goals forward.
And what was the result of that clash? Well, this table just lays it out perfectly. Phillips 66, they got a financial win. They got to dump a massive liability and protect their profits. California, they got a political win, asserting their regulatory muscle. But the public had a clear strategic loss, and they're the ones left holding the bag.
And the contents of that bag are pretty severe. We're talking 900 high-paying, skilled jobs just gone. The state's already shaky fuel market is now 8% smaller, which means it's more reliant on foreign imports. Oh, and California is now stuck with a 650-acre toxic site with a cleanup budget that experts say is just a tiny fraction of what's actually going to be needed. And this brings us right back to the final, really provocative thought that the AI hosts left us with. They concluded that a global energy company that literally survived the greatest economic, military, and geopolitical crises of the entire 20th century could not, in the end, survive the policies of a single state regulator.
And that leaves us with this huge, critical question. And it's not just for California. It's for any government trying to navigate this energy transition. How much immediate economic pain, how many job losses, and how much supply chain risk is a state willing to force on its own people to speed up its agenda? It's a massive question, and there are absolutely no easy answers.